All right, you guys, listen, today is going to blow your mind. I know you guys are used to your mind getting blown, so I get it. But today's guest is really seriously going to knock your socks off. This guy is on all the news shows. You look him up. You're going to when you hear this and you hear the knowledge that you're going to get today, you're going to be absolutely blown away. So, without further ado, let's dive into the show.
So the big question is this: how can we achieve financial freedom, quit the 9-to-5, and live a mighty life? That is the question, and this show will give you the answer. You are listening to The Mighty Mike Show with your host, Mighty Mike Reed.
Mr. Brian J. Esposito, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Mighty Mike, thanks for having me.
Hey, listen, I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. I was going through it and I was like, man, this guy has got so much we could talk about. I mean, from the business entrepreneur side, being a CEO for other people, that alone is interesting. The real estate stuff, doing your own companies, the development stuff, the NFT stuff. I was like, this guy, and we only got so much time. So the first thing I want to do is just take just a minute and tell us a little bit about you and your personal life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. So on the professional side, it's over 20 years I think it's 23 years now. My professional career started as a teenager building companies and creating value and going out and earning money. Today, present day, there's over 110 companies in my holdings. There's over 200 joint ventures around the world and proudly operating in over 25 different industries. So it's a little bit humbling. We just recently updated my corporate website, and going through that and some of the things that you're mentioning, it's like, holy shit, did I do all that? That's kind of just it sets you back on your feet a little bit, because someone like me, I'm always moving forward. I'm always pushing on keeping growing and moving inch a day. That's my mentality. Let's just keep the momentum going. So I very rarely look backwards to see what I've done and what I've accomplished and the hurdles that I've had to overcome. So like you said, yeah, there's a lot going on, but the exciting thing is, finally in my career, I love what I do. I love the people I'm around. I always say I think true freedom is the ability to make choices, and I'm so happy that I have the ability to say no to things and no to people that I don't want to work with.
Yes.
Because for me, it's empathy, it's humble, it's grounded people. That's all I want to work with. And the money is a byproduct of that. The successes, the accomplishments, the milestones. To me, it's meaningless if you're working with people you don't want to be around, or toxic environments. So finally, at a moment where I just love what I do and I love who I get to work with.
Okay, so now the first place my mind goes is like, what does a day in a life look like with Brian? Like,
Oh, it's not sexy. It's not sexy at all. Day in the life, it's, there's all these companies. The structure I have on my side, it's I don't know, people don't really get it. My brain is the one that keeps all this stuff moving. A lot of people need things like Slack or all these different types of boards to keep organized. I know what needs to get done, and we've got great management in place in a lot of these companies, and they know what needs to get done. So that helps out tremendously. And for me, it's simple WhatsApp groups for almost every company. And it's just like, okay, what do we need to do today? If there's an issue today, how do we correct it? If we need to accomplish getting a deal done, or moving something across the finish line, or creating more momentum, or creating whatever we need to do, we just go and do it. So that's the day in the life, is just work. That's my bread. That's in my DNA, is just to work. In the form that I've created, it's building companies. It's adding value to companies. It's boosting balance sheets. It's creating profitable earnings. That's what I strive to do.
I love that. So you're an integrator and a visionary at the same time. You have to be an entrepreneur, right? In many ways. But what I hear you saying is a lot of analytical stuff, right? Like, you get up and you're like, oh my gosh, we're 7.5% over last quarter, and you're excited. And, you tell me that, I'm like, does that mean we get lunch?
Actually, I feel bad it's coming across like that. There's not a mathematical number. It's as long as I want to see people happy and energized, and I want to see momentum and movement. That doesn't necessarily mean that we got to hit numbers, or there's public companies that I'm involved with that's a different formula, because there's shareholders and you have to make sure you protect them.
Right.
But no, in my mind is I want to be energized. I want people to feel excited. I want people to love what they do. And the fun part about all of these holdings is bringing in new companies or getting invited into startups that may be failing, or they may not know what to do because they don't know the right people, or they don't have the right access or the right strategy.
Right.
And when you drop it into my ecosystem, you create almost instant value. And that's 20 plus years
Mm,
of doing that. But that's where the excitement comes for me. That's where I get energized. That's why I love what I do. Is that you can take somebody's life work that they just were failing at, and they didn't know
mm,
how to turn it around, see them light up, and to see them have a new purpose in life. That's awesome. I love that. That
mm.
happens almost daily when I get to talk and work with these companies, or have them on the phone with people that like,
Mm.
my God, how do I get to talk with this person? Because that's what I love to do. I want to make value. I want to make people feel good about themselves, and then I want the companies to succeed.
So, Brian, we won't name drop anybody because, we don't want to have to take this down later or anything. But you've worked with some pretty big names. I'm curious your experience with. My experience has been that people that are on TV or wealthy and things like that, they're just people.
Hmm.
99.9. There's that one person who thinks they're not just a person and nobody likes them, right? Nobody likes them. So is that your experience that most people are just, they're just people and they happen to
Yeah.
make certain moves and actions that put them where they are?
Yeah, no, I agree. And if that person wasn't famous and they were working somewhere else, they wouldn't like them there either. That's just the type of person that they are.
That's so true.
But yeah,
That's true.
where it gets a little sideways is and I'm not. There's a need for management agents and publicists. There's a need for all that, but that's where it gets the relationship gets a little bit too pushy, I guess, because they
Mm,
they earn off of the celebrity's earnings, or the athlete or the entertainer. So it's usually those are the people that are the problems because they are just they're deal makers. They just want to keep making deals and keep pushing
mm,
these icons into business deals. And sometimes that's not the right deal for that entertainer. And we've seen
mm,
a lot of them kind of get in trouble over the last few years as they got involved with certain different industries that may be regulated or may not be regulated. A lot of that happened because management wanted to get their check. So they were pushing deals.
yeah,
So from my experience, I got to work with some great icons, and yeah, they're fantastic, and they all have an ego to an extent. But
yeah,
I like, for whatever reason, with me, people kind of just be normal around me. So I like that because I'm not affected by whatever you have. I don't care what you have. If we get to do
yeah,
great work together, that's what I
yeah.
care. I don't care what you may or may not have in the bank. I'm not your accountant. It has no relevance to me. So for me, I tend to break people down into just being who they were in high school, without all
Mm,
this noise and fluff around them.
yeah. I like that. I like that because, and at the end of the day, those people that you're working with, you get to see their true colors. It's interesting how you're able to then do business with them in other ways. Like if you're very just open, upfront about what you're not good at. A lot of times your friends are the ones that are like, oh, I can show you. There's two things you're missing, and you got this, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like boastful because you're popular in your own little space, then you're never going to get those opportunities. And so I love that. And we won't mention the names, but these are big icons, right? That you've worked with, and it's
Hmm.
pretty cool and exciting. And it doesn't bother you, but I'm curious when you first started out, were there times where maybe it would have, but where you would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm working with
I,
this person.
I wish I had somebody that would, make me nervous, or like when Elvis was around, women's legs would
Yeah,
shake. Like I
yeah,
don't, there's nobody that, no. I get overwhelmed when I see somebody handing somebody, a homeless guy, food on the street. Like, to me, that's a moment
yes.
where I'm like, wow, that's where I get taken back, because that's a rarity. That's like,
Mhm.
it's an unfortunate rarity. My wife is amazing at that. She's always getting food out and giving it to people. So that to me that's a successful person, when you care about somebody else.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'm an old soul. I would have answered your question differently in the '50s if I got to be around the Frank Sinatras, Dean Martins of the world. I think that that would have done
Dang.
something for me.
Well, in that whole world, Frank Sinatra and then the mob and the casinos
Hmm.
and all those guys, like to get into that world would have
Yeah.
been wow, you could
Yeah.
pretty much do whatever you want to do, write your own check.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. One of my favorite moments was 2001. I got to see Don Rickles at the Tropicana in Las Vegas, not Las Vegas, Atlantic City, the butthole of Las Vegas. But he pulled me up on the stage, and I got to have that moment, which was awesome. So I got to have a little bit of taste of that history.
So let's dive into your story, because there's a lot. I know there's a lot, and I know our time is limited. So I want to kind of do like a stop in this moment. This is how it happened, and then we'll fast forward and do it again throughout the main points here. But like, let's take it back to like you maybe you're working as an employee making minimum wage, right? Let's say like, where did you grow up? What was that first job? And then just briefly, and then where did you go? Like, what was that first big break where you're like, this is what I'm gonna do?
Yeah, well, I've always been entrepreneur in spirit. Like, my dad got me a tractor when I was 10 to cut our lawn, and then I used that to cut all the neighbors' lawns, and then I recruited a bunch of kids and got weed whackers and blowers and rakes and
Awesome.
built a mess of a business, and going to intermediate school. Like, that's normal. One of my jobs in high school, I won't share with you. It's not that a little colorful. And then I was a busboy at a very close family friend's restaurant, Italian restaurant. But what I liked about that was the interaction around people, and really understanding the service industry. I have so much respect for people in the service industry, whether bartenders, housekeeping in a hotel, or waiters or waitresses. It's a brutal job, but it does help your ability to connect with people and solve problems and see people get excited and feel good about foods, hear stories.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went into building my own business. I took over a legendary coffee shop in West End, New Jersey, right by Monmouth University. Famous spot, the Inkwell. It's been around since the late 50s, early 60s. Bob Dylan wrote lyrics about it. Bruce Springsteen talks about it in his books all the time. So a lot of icons have been in and out of this establishment. That was amazing for me. I was going to college. I'm a freshman, sophomore in college. This place is, think of it like I used to say it's a Starbucks meets a Fridays. And there's just still nothing like it in the world. Well, maybe not in the world, but at least not in the U.S. And I'd be there. We were open till like 4 or 5 in the morning. So I'd be working there, busting my ass. We had lines around the corner. The place was just amazing. And then rolling into class 8 a.m. So that was
college, you said?
This was college. Yeah. So that
Okay.
was probably my favorite moment. One of my favorite moments was running that place and building that business up. And then my brother ran it from the last 20 years. I just kept going on and building my entrepreneurial career. Post that, then I built the first B2B, B2C e-commerce platform for the beauty industry. And that's where I got to work with a lot of pretty amazing icons and brands. I launched over 1,200 brands. I built that business for 16, 17 years of my life.
So Brian, sorry to interrupt you, but let's go back real quick. Let's go back to you're working as a busboy to owning your own coffee shop.
That's a normal. That's pretty typical, right?
That was a skip, jump, backflip, man. Yeah, okay. So, like, was there a relationship or something that had to have been a relationship?
Key point. Yeah, I mean, it was divine intervention. So the place. This is pretty interesting about the place. Joe DeStasio was the guy that first created it in the 60s or late 50s. One day he just got up and left. He just moved to California with his flip flops and said he's out. Then at some point in the 70s, mid-late 70s, my dad purchased the building. So there was a new tenant in there running the Inkwell. And then it changed hands again to, I think, a police officer, and it was a partnership. I forget what the other guy did. And then one day they just stopped and turned the lights off. That's when I said, this is an institution. This place can't be shut down. So I said to my dad, let me just take it over. First, let me clean it up and make it like where I would eat there. And then let's just open it back up like it never closed. So that was the relationship. If my dad didn't own the building, then obviously that wasn't going to happen as a 18-year-old kid. It's just not reality.
That's so cool.
And then from there, that's where I also got my I'm a marketer at heart. I love marketing. I love creating needs and demands and telling stories about things and getting people excited about things. And then I love putting the business models behind it to keep people excited about things. That's the formula a lot of companies don't properly connect. You got to keep them excited. So yeah, that was a way that rolled out for me to be able to take over that restaurant.
It's so good. And it sounds so simple, but it was so important, right? Because there's so many people who out there that's a busboy or a waiter or a waitress. And I say it with emphasis because that's how they're looked upon sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in that job, know that those skills carry over in so many ways, the customer service skills and things like that. And then building the relationships. I mean, this was your father, but you can also build relationships with people who own things.
Oh,
And just
absolutely.
make friends, increase your network. So then you start there and then you build this company, and that actually built. This is something so many people miss, Brian, is the cash flow, the money that you were able to generate and earn from that first business where you probably slept on the floor or at least worked all day, every day
Yeah.
while you were building it, right?
Oh yeah. And then you learn things like terms for billing, even our vendors, like our coffee bean vendor, the whipped cream guy, our produce. Like I learned cash is king, cash flow is king, and I'm not
Yep.
paying it until it's due. And maybe I'll even extend it a little bit further because that cash is necessary for building a business or hiring people. And
So good.
now you go into a place and they say we don't take cash. That cracks me up. It freaks me out and it cracks me up at the same
It's
time.
kind of scary, right?
It's
Especially.
very, very scary.
Yeah. So your story is so good. So you're working coffee, you're hustling. I feel like there's gonna be a movie. I'm in a movie right now. I'm in my
Oh,
head.
this
I'm
is
a
great.
marketer.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a horror flick. Well, if we really get into it,
Well, yes, there's some good stuff there. So let's go to that because we don't have the 5 hours we need to go through your whole story. So you get into the makeup stuff.
yeah.
You meet. I'm being very general here, but you get into that. You make some really good connections with people. And then what is that worst experience you've had? Like, what was that time where
Oh
you were like, what do I do now?
no, it was habitually worst experience ever. So any of your listeners that are, I'm not calling me a visionary, but I have to use that word, or you want to create something that's never been created, you're going to run into a hell of a lot of problems. So when one of the reasons why I love my story in the beauty industry, my dad disrupted the beauty industry when he built stores in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. There wasn't stores for these types of products. There were sales reps out selling products, and then they got delivered to them. So my dad disrupted that model, and he built stores for retail consumers and professionals, which would be hairdressers, estheticians, anybody that has a
Oh,
license for beauty, to shop in the same store. He developed that concept, which was amazing. And he ran into a slew of problems because you're disrupting a traditional distribution channel. So then I come along after his non-compete ended, and even though he had great history and great relationships, it was still a brand new business because the brands that were important to him, now they could be bought in drugstores or supermarkets. So it wasn't exclusive anymore. I had to go out and find new brands. I had to go out and really build the business. Even though my last name had history in the business, it didn't really do me a lot of work, a lot of justice, because I had to still get my ass kicked every day. So now I go and build. First, what I did was I had salespeople out on the road, including myself, and driving around New Jersey and parts of Manhattan, even going into Pennsylvania. I said, this sucks. I can't. How am I supposed to make a business here? I can only hit X amount of shops at a time. There's so much traffic, and I'm making appointments for people, and they're doing hair or they're doing nails. I can't even talk to them. I said, there's just that moment where there's got to be a better way. Then I go back to my history and loving technology, loving computers. I said, all right, well then the internet was brewing then in the late 90s. I said, all right, let me go and try to build a platform for this. At that time, there was no Wix or WordPress. There's millions and millions of dollars that you would have to pay a handful of companies to develop an e-commerce platform. I said, well, I ain't doing that. So I taught myself how to code and started coding a website and building a storefront online. Well before Sephora's of the world, well before anybody, I was the first one to do that. And it worked. I remember the first product I sold was a Fido Leger, it was called, or Fido. They had a professional hair care line called Secret Professional, and I sold a Sublime hydrating mask. And I remember, I don't know, it's like a kid at Christmas. I remember being so excited. I ran down to the warehouse, I printed the label, ran down to the warehouse, packed it up, drove to the post office, put a label on it, and shipped it. So excited. Get back to
that's
my
so
computer.
cool.
There's 50 more orders. I said, oh shit, I got this problem. It's a big problem, which was a good
Hire
problem.
somebody, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
to
I
hire.
started like when you're building a business and scaling it. And but what happened was that led me to get a little bit of a spotlight on me. Then I quickly learned Amazon was going to be the turnkey one-stop shop. I knew that so early on. So I became their first beauty luxe retailer. I was Jet.com's first e-tailer. I designed Target's beauty aisle in 2012 when I flew out to their offices that they just started implementing recently,
Yes.
but they're still missing a beauty consultant in the aisle helping people and preventing theft. But what happened was all the brands that I was getting, they were getting so much heat from their other distributors or partners because I was coming up everywhere for buying that product online.
Mm.
So even though I was moving product and the manufacturers were happy, they were forced to have to sue me to protect their distribution models and all of their
Mm.
other channels. So now I'm 20, 21, and I'm getting lawsuits left and right. I was in a Supreme Court fighting this brand called Moroccan Oil because I sold a 0.75 ounce bottle of hair oil. You don't expect the beauty industry and then expect to be sued because you're selling lotions and potions. So
Yeah.
every day there was this, but then the salespeople all loved me because they were making a fortune off of me, off of all the products I was moving. So they were defending me. The brands even loved me and the manufacturers loved me because of the new channel that I built, but they didn't know how to balance the new movement and the traditional movement.
Mm.
Funny thing now, all of those brands, and I launched over 1,200 brands, they're all on Amazon exclusively. They're the
Yeah.
ones selling it. So they were fighting me, but working with me early on. Then I had things like Amazon shut me off, and that was a big part of my business because there's no people there. So if you don't ship orders fast enough or you don't respond to customer service questions fast enough, they just shut you off, and you can't.
Mm.
It's almost impossible to turn you back on. So there's those hurdles. Then I had to deal with Hurricane Sandy. We were on the Jersey Shore, so we were just out of commission for months. So I was hit with everything you can imagine to make me just quit and stop and kind of hate life, but I just kept pushing forward and figuring out. It's a very long story, but during that process, I was helping brands become $100 million brands, billion-dollar brands. My model was so wrong because I was a distribution outlet. I was the one giving that brand awareness. I was the one giving that brand credibility. Then those brands had huge numbers, and Estee Lauder, Louis Vuitton, L'Oreal, Revlon, they would come and buy out those brands. And I'm talking a lot of money, and I had no equity in those brands. And I also lost the brand because those other companies have the distribution models. So that's when I started thinking, this sucks. I need to own as much as I can. So that's when I started building my own technologies, launching my own different types of businesses. And in my mind, I want to have as much as the pie as possible. And I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I want to invite warranted people into my world rather than people inviting me into their world and using me and then me chasing them for crumbs that I'm promised. So that's why I kept building. And my mindset is, I think it's like a protection defense mechanism where I just have to keep building because I don't ever want to be in that position or feel that way again.
Yeah. Geez. Wow. So, I mean, that definitely, what I take from your story is basically you went out there, you were first to market, on the online sales thing. And then, and you were helping these companies grow, say, hey, I'll distribute for you. And then there's kind of like no loyalty there, it's just business,
No
you hear
loyalty.
that. And then so my mind went to kind of like creatively just thinking I wonder if you would have said, listen, we could charge this rate to distribute for you, or we can charge this lower rate, but we actually own a little bit equity of your company. Is that even possible in that industry?
Well, that's what I do now. I don't get
Ah,
involved with any company unless I'm a member of the management team, so I know what's going on, and I'm not in a position where they do me harm. And I can give the most value, and I have my equity slug. Otherwise, no,
yeah.
because imagine if I did that model, which sucks. If I did that model for every brand, and I could have because I had what they wanted. If I own a point here, a point there on over 1,200 brands, amazing, an absolutely brilliant model, which is what I do now. But I wish I learned it a little bit earlier on in my career.
Expensive lessons, right? Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that because so many people think that, oh, he has this and he has that, and they like to compare and despair. But so I'm curious, what did you do from there? So you I know now the success story, Wheat Right, is where we're at, but how did you pull yourself up from that? I mean, was it another relationship where you're like, hey, let me see who I know? Because you sounds like you went all in on technology.
All in on tech, usually always. Love the music industry. So if anything IP related or building products, technologies, yeah. Well, in our holdings, we have incredible IP. MetaLife is, I think, going to be one of the most powerful companies in the world. It connects our devices without the need of a cellular or Wi-Fi connection. So it can truly connect the unconnected world, which is another 3 or 4 billion people around the world that have a cell phone, but they don't have a cell tower to connect to or a Wi-Fi station.
Yeah.
And we could bank the unbanked. That's where it gets really interesting with digital assets and what we can do with tokenization of real world assets, which is really
Yes.
heavy in your world with real
Yeah.
estate. That's going to be a massive movement. So when you start looking at things like that, I love the fact that I'm involved with empowering people that never had access to investments and at a fractional level. So that can change people's lives. In first world countries and second world countries, we don't really understand how much a dollar, an extra dollar a day or an extra dollar a month can change somebody's life that's living in a hut.
Yeah.
So when you give them the opportunity to empower themselves, I believe that the idea of buying into investments through a tokenized asset, real world asset, even if they put anything into it, whatever they can afford, if it's a dime, if it's a dollar, they have a sense of ownership in something. It used to be back in the day when you own land as a man, it was not to sound sexist, but it was a man's pride to own a piece of land that made him
Yeah.
feel like a man, and he provided for his family and they built a home. I don't think that's realistic anymore because it's just not enough land and it's completely not priced economically where that's even possible. But if someone now can own a fractionalized ownership of a building or a precious metal or gold or silver, it gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them a real sense of ownership. And I think that changes people's lives. I think that helps them better their lives, and it helps them get themselves out of a situation that they're of poverty or doom and gloom where they have no opportunities. This changes that.
Yeah.
That's why I love technology. People use it for bad. That's the reality, but it can do a lot of good and it can now help a lot of people.
So what do you think? I mean, I'm on board with all that. I'm just like I'm blown away by the just the vastness of all the different things you're doing. But I'm going to be selfish here, and I'm going to ask you about real estate.
Yeah,
So when was the first time? I mean, obviously your dad owned lots of real estate, and then
yeah.
he's very involved. So were you always kind of involved? It kind of was like, hey, I got this other office building. I need you to go sweep it out, like as a kid, or is that kind
Yeah.
of where it started? Or
Yeah. What I liked about being around my dad, outside of Boxable, which I'm honored to be a part of their advisor, a strategic advisor and investor, that's the fully manufactured modular home and it's like a car manufacturing facility. They can build a 400 square foot
oh, I've
home
heard
full
about this.
up.
Elon Musk was all about that for a
Yeah,
minute, right?
he has a Boxable in Austin, but amazing company, amazing leadership. So I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. That's a residential. It's an ownership of a residential unit that you can use for a dwelling or affordable housing or put in your backyard. It's beautiful structures.
Yeah.
But being around my pops and his empathy for people, he could never do residential real estate because he could never
Mm,
put somebody out on the street. And I'm the
makes
same
sense.
way. And I always watched him help companies. And now that we're talking about it, I feel like that's where maybe I do it in a different form. He would give them the best rent possible. He would give them free rent to get their businesses going, free rent for tenant improvement. And he was in it for the long term. He would say, okay, in 15, 20 years, this tenant's going to be paying a lot of money and they're going to have a good business. And I don't have to have an empty unit for a month because they went out of business
Yeah.
and he always worked with his tenants. So I admired that, and I saw the long term value in that. And talking with you about it, that's probably one of the reasons why I like working with startups. It's because it's the same type of structure, right? Getting them the
Yeah.
strong foundation to be able to succeed and grow and build. It may not be a physical building, but the structure and the asset is an entity. And how do you give that entity the opportunity to succeed? You don't bleed it dry from the beginning. I also learned this in the beauty industry. Fillers, manufacturing fillers that would fill nail polish or shampoo bottles. They don't give a crap about their customer. They actually say, your odds are you're going to go out of business. I'm going to charge you as much as possible.
Interesting.
So when you find a filler, or me knowing that industry now, like I know what to do and what to ask for, and to ensure that brand or that product has the ability to be profitable and distributed through multiple channels and have different margins depending on where it's distributed. But that you only get that through experience, Mike. You know what you know now because of what you've done in your life. I know. I always love to say it's not really always what you know; it's what you know not to do, or what you know not to know, and that's the value. I know. I know what not to do. That's, and I'm still going to wonder: is this the right decision? Is this going forward? Because there's always new moments, there's always new experiences or situations. But I damn well know what not to do. As I've gotten my ass kicked in over 25 different industries and still here.
I love what Warren Buffett says about it. He says, the beautiful thing is like baseball, but there's as long as you don't swing, you can never get struck out. Right. That's the one difference. And it's so true. Like, businesses come across my desk all the time. I have a team of people who are specifically looking for opportunities to buy things at a 1 or 2x multiple, where they actually have cash flow, in the courier transportation space. And it's crazy. It's crazy. If you just say no, you just won't lose money. Just keep saying no. And then when one is like, this has to work, because of XYZ, that's so true. So that's good. So let's talk a little bit about Boxable. Okay. So no, this is not a paid sponsorship, but I'm fascinated by it because, like, for example, I'm here in New Mexico, and in Texas and Arizona, we do a lot of business in this area, and there's land for cheap. I can buy land all day long for $10,000 an acre, or for 2.5 acres in some spots. And to buy a Boxable unit, put it out there, and start renting it out, like, this seems like a really
changes the game. It changes the game on timing, on fluctuation in materials and subcontractors, and getting things done on time, or waiting for your CO that continues to get delayed and pushed. When you can drop a unit like this off that's has all the appliances you need. It's got a living room, bedroom, shower, bathroom, kitchen, and again, all the appliances. All you got to do is hook it up to water, power, and sewer, and you're off to the races. They have it. They definitely have it. And I do believe that with the right continued growth and the enhancements and growth of their factories, that they're going to churn out a pretty substantial amount of units per day and per month. So yeah, in the model that you're describing, what a home run win for people to get into real estate and be able to create communities, and also, more importantly, help people have a home. I think, especially in our country, with the wealth that's here, nobody should be hungry, nobody should be thirsty, nobody should be without a home. It's unacceptable. So things like what they're doing, I believe, offer that to be a reality, at least fix one of those things. And great team, and honored to have been working with them since 2018.
That's so cool. I mean, it does start to put it in a situation where you can like world hunger, the old beauty pageants. You used to always say that, where it's actually reachable, that Elon or Bezos and some of these guys could go, you know what? Sure, let's make a city in this area. The problem is maintenance and maintaining in these other countries where where it may be more lawless and things like that, and there's no water and XYZ, and so that's a whole nother topic. But I love that. It's entrepreneurship and this beautiful society that we have, that has many flaws. It's still a market economy.
Yeah.
You can change your life by going out and solving problems for other people that will then make you some money along the way. Help people and make money. I just love it. So the other thing too, let's transition real quick and let's talk about NFTs. Someone said recently that now all NFTs are worth nothing. Is this true?
Oh, a lot of them are down north of 90%. I have been working on a solution for that. So let's look at, I don't want to give away too much, but let's look at it as a distressed asset. That's how I'm looking at it. Let's look at there's X amount of millions of distressed assets out there. Now, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a way to exchange them into something of value? That's what I'm working on. The communities and the engagement and the loyalty behind these is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen somebody living on Discord or in a Telegram group 24 hours a day talking about an NFT project. That's the reality of those communities, or those Web3 communities. They're the most passionate people in the world.
Yeah.
They can be highly irrational and highly emotional, but they're damn well giving you their time. And my company motto for over 20 years is time is our most precious commodity. So I'm looking at it as a distressed asset with a massive community and a massive consumer base. How can I fix that? How can I turn that around? And I've been working over the last year on a model where I think we have all the pieces to exchange value for that and to give these holders something for nothing, which is exciting. Something for their worthless digital asset.
It just reminds me of Dogecoin and Musk and.
Well, it should remind you of Beanie Babies.
Oh yeah,
you could say they're worthless compared to what they were worth. There's always these movements and fads and trends. This happens to be in a digital environment. Everybody tends to forget, and I don't know why they don't blame this, but it's the reality. There was a global shutdown, and that's why Web3 blew up. That's why NFTs blew up. That's why these communities blew up, because there was nothing to do. People were home and they were joining these Discords. The problem with that was there was no guardrails or procedures or policies. These things just went out into the world with no real policing or regulatory, which I think is so important. And people put their taxed earnings behind them because, like you said, the richest guy in the world is out there touting Dogecoin. He's on Saturday Night Live talking about it. You have all these actors and actresses and athletes promoting their projects because, again, their management said, shit, there's no concerts, there's no games. This is how you're going to make some money right now. And that's how I'm going to make some money right now. So it ties into kind of what I was touching on earlier.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. If it was a normal world, and that Web3 movement would have just been a lot more structured and slow paced, and it would have been, I think, more safer for your money to go into. But that's not the reality. What happened. But I think there's so much value there. Different than a distressed asset as a building or a piece of real estate somewhere. There's always an opportunity. You just have to know the right timing and the right procedure to turn it around.
Yeah, so good. So what do you think about the the multifamily space when it comes to NFTs? I know a couple people are doing projects where they're selling bits of this NFT, they're tokenizing it, and some of them are just giving it away. It's like, hey, if you join this program, we'll give you this, this percentage. Basically, it's a percentage of the asset and the dividends as a limited partner.
Yeah.
I'm just like, interesting. So, because right now the SEC has all these rules for what you can be, what you can't be, and things
that's a
like
security. No, that's 100% a security. So in my world, that's where I've been living for a long time, in security tokens. These are registered, regulated SEC digital securities that you just described as security, and as something that spins off a yield or a return. You can't say that's an NFT and then say, oops, I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. So in my world, great, it's a security. Great, it's a new asset class and a new way to bring in capital or bring in communities and sell these digital assets, but in a regulated environment. So that's the world that I live in, and using exchanges, regulated exchanges like INX. So those are my partners to do security token offerings. Republic, who's one of the largest crowdfunding companies in the world, they just invested into INX. So this whole movement is happening, and what you're saying is fantastic for, again, bring in an opportunity to maybe a non-credited investor that can participate in buying a fractional ownership of something. But if they have a perceived higher value at some point, or they have a yield coming in, well, that just, to me, fits the definition of a security. So fine, that's okay. Do it in a way where it's approved and agreed, which would be a security token offering.
Follow the rules. Yeah.
All the rules.
Yeah, that's the key. Yeah. So as we transition into it, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of people going, oh crap. And so knowing ahead of time what direction to take and how to take advantage of these things. One guy who plays at a pretty high level I had on the show, and he was talking about being able to transfer. So let's say you have one asset, being able to transfer that asset to yourself, but you're just leaving off some partners, for example. That transfer, you have to pay for title insurance on that transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes on these assets, it could be 50, 60,
Oh, yeah.
70, even $100,000. He goes, for that reason alone, I want this to happen.
Yeah.
So it's
Doing it
crazy.
on chain. Yeah. I mean, the efficiencies and the cost savings is ridiculous. And it's in a public key where it's transparent and you can proof that transfer actually happened correctly because it's on that chain. I'm with
So
him.
good.
I'm with whoever that was. He's absolutely right. The other issue is banking, which a lot of people don't really think about. When Silvergate, Signature Bank, and Silicon Valley Bank were all forced to go through that crap because some of the bigger banks were not happy with them operating in this digital asset space. You can't even say things like that and be able to have an account right now. Some people are blessed, some companies are blessed, but what you were explaining, odds are if their banker or their client relationships at their bank look into their charter or rules and regulations that they can't do that. So therefore they're stifling innovation because you can't really operate like that because you're doing something with a token or some sort of transfer of asset in a digital environment. That's not what those accounts are allowed to do. So we're running into that issue right now. I mean, my feeling is Chase, there'll be one bank in our country. It'll be a JP Morgan Chase.
Of course.
Maybe Bank of America can hang around too. There'll be one grocery store. There'll be one utility company. That just seems to be where we're going.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, it's crazy because it's so far along now that I got lots of dogs. I breed German Shepherds, solid black Shepherds, right? And I'd love to just go to the regular feed store, but the feed is twice the price.
Wow.
Twice the price. And at some point you're like, all right, I'll just go to Walmart,
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm not hurting for money, but it's like just you don't want to
Principle. Yeah, it's principle.
be double. Yeah. So unfortunately that's how it's set up. But so for real estate, what's your journey? Like, when did you get into multifamily? I mean, you're doing boxable, but have you invested in multifamily? Has there been a good experience there?
Well, what I've been working on with EV Hotel, that's probably the most prominent work, is the first most high-tech hotel concept in the world, where there's over 20 IoT smart devices from check-in to your room to around the facility, and then including it with all the different uses, all the different property uses that would really enhance the monetization of that building, and then adding a crypto digital asset component. So that's where you start to touch on things like NFTs, where when you're checking in, you can connect your wallet, and we have the NFT lobby in our designs where that lights up. So you play on people's ego and feeling good that, oh, these are all my digital assets. And the same thing would apply to the rooms. What gets really fun about the monetization of a hotel, the way that we've structured it, you start to add value to whatever's happening in that city that day. So, if there's a famous celebrity that's performing that night at one of the stadiums, you can convert those rooms into that performer's room that comes with a digital asset. So a $300 a night typically room in this type of world we live in could be a $3,000 a night. It could be a $30,000 a night because you're getting that digital asset that gives you closer proximity to that artist. It gives you, some sort of utility where maybe you can have a meet and greet with them, or you can do a Zoom call with them, or you get some additional memorabilia. So now, the way that I look at really any type of asset as a value proposition is what can I do to make that asset worth more, or that building? What can we add to change the model where you're not just priced as a multiplier as a hotel? EV Hotel, the way that that's being developed, and Ken Patel, the chairman and CEO, the Tesla of hotels. Tesla's not priced like a typical automobile company. They have a higher multiplier because of what they are and the messaging and the way the market is perceiving their value. So when you look at those types of buildings, or if you're involved with multifamily, you're involved with any type of real estate, what can you do to enhance the value of that building? I've been trained so heavily on sale leaseback. To me, that's the most perfect way to really tremendously add a lot of value to that piece of real estate. You own the building, but you also own a credited operating company and a credit rated company inside of that building. So now you have increased the value of a long-term tenant. You have the multiplier of like having a bank in your building, or like having a Starbucks in your building. But now you own the operating company, you own the businesses in the building, and you own the building. So you have this full loop. To me, that's the holy grail of owning as much as you possibly can and protecting, what they say, wealth enhancement, wealth preservation. Because at least, if you're smart with operating your business and you're profitable at your business, you're not going to not have a tenant for your building.
Right. Right. That's so good. And there's so much of your story seems to stack onto the next part, and the way that you look at things, right? From the office lease spaces or business lease spaces that your dad had, to getting into the social, building the relationships when you went into the makeup, right? And then going into this thing, right? You started went heavy on the technology. So I'm curious, you had your story, you had, based on what you know today, somebody who's watching. I always love to ask this question because the majority, I'm sure you know this, Brian, the majority of people out there, they don't make $10,000 a month, right? They just don't. So what would you say that person should go do? I know what I would say, but I'm just curious, like, just from what would you do with the knowledge that you have? Where would you go first in the next 30 to 90 days to try to build something?
So many ways to answer that question. Where I am today and what I say to people, you have to put the money in a different part of your mind. I mean, you have bills and you have rent and your car payment, insurance. Like, those are realities, and you have to pay that. Otherwise, they get taken away from you. But I would say to people, I don't care how much money you're making or not. The first thing is, are you happy? Because the rest is that the money's kind of irrelevant. If you're not happy with what you do or where you're at, that's the most important piece of life. You want to wake up and jump out of bed in the morning and go and do what you love to do. I know people that don't take certain promotions, or they don't change jobs because even if it's a pay raise, they just don't want to do that because they don't want to disrupt their commute. They don't want to disrupt the lifestyle that they've created. They're just happy. So I would need to know more about this hypothetical question about who the person is, where their passions are, what they love to do. And then my mind goes, well, here's what I would do if I was you, based on what you love to do, based on your skills, based off of where you feel you want to be.
Right.
But I would say, first and foremost, get off of Instagram and TikTok and stop looking at other people's shit, because you're going to be miserable. You need to just find happiness in yourself and your value, and you need to find a job or start a business that you love to do. The rest falls into place. But if you don't like what you do, or you're around toxic people, or you're in a chaotic environment, you can make $100,000 a month. It doesn't change that you're going to be happy. It's not the reality.
What would you do if you start over?
Oh man, I'd probably go work at Macy's and get my 2 weeks off a year. No, I don't. I answer this question the same all the time. I wouldn't change anything, because I had to go through what I had to go through, and I'm still going through stuff. And I'm evolving as a person. I like the savviness and the strength that I have in the business world now. I like the voice that I have now. I've always had this voice, but as a 20-year-old in a room, you have no power behind that voice. Nobody listens to you. You could be screaming it. It doesn't matter. You haven't earned it. So I like and I wouldn't have this type of confidence in the business world if I haven't gotten every bruise you can think of. So I wouldn't change a thing, because I would be a completely different person than I am today.
I love that. And the reason why I resonate with that so much is because I forget who said it, but that your back gets shaped to fit the burden that is placed upon you, whether you believe in the universe or God, or, for me, I believe in God. I believe that if he wants me to do something and it's what's next for me, he's going to shape my back to fit that burden. Yeah. And so when you were that 20-year-old kid and you're like, you were already a hustler. Let's be honest. You had your own
I was.
store.
I was.
Yeah, you were crushing it, and so you were getting sued. Like everything's coming down on you. But those
Yeah.
are good problems to have. Like if you didn't have those problems, what would your problems be? That your shift manager is always breathing down your neck at Macy's or whatever,
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's all relative. Still all affects your
yeah,
soul and your well-being 100%.
it's a better problem to have, right?
Yeah.
So go out there, take action, I think is the main thing, whatever it is your goals are, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And then through that process, that's why Gary Vee became so famous, I think anyway, because his message was so consistent. He talking about just kindness and compassion and the ROI on that. And then the ability to be able to take action on the things that you want to do. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take 10 years. It's going to take 20 years. You
No.
know, working in your parents' was it liquor store for 10 years while everybody was partying. You know, he's still salty about that a little bit. So
That's all
good
part of the
stuff.
journey. It's all. I have an article I wrote. It was more therapeutic in 2018. I think it's the 7,360 something night of my overnight success. So I want to write a chapter 2 to that where we're up to like I think 10,000 nights of the overnight success. But it is. I don't think there's really any value, or it's not as rewarding unless it's hard. I think
Yeah.
you need to have that, and you appreciate it more when those wins come in, and you start to respect money, you respect your time, because you know how hard it is to earn, in our country, how hard it is to keep, because it's taxed every which way you can. There was I'm going to misquote it, but it was like a $500 payment to somebody, and they showed how much the government took from that payment as it continued to trickle down. That 500
Right.
got paid to somebody, got paid to somebody, got paid to,
Yeah.
I think it was like 340 something dollars was paid to the government off of that $500, but they only started it there. They didn't go to where that $500 came from before. But it was really interesting when you start to look at things in a visualization like that. So I'm not anti-government or anti-taxes, but I'm just saying it's hard to make, it's hard to keep. And people should know that you're not being picked on when life is tough. It's just, we all go through it. And you can use, watching the shows like yours, going on. I'm a LinkedIn fanatic. I've been on that platform since day one. I think you can build the best opportunities there in relationships, and you can curate a network that are people that you admire, people that inspire you, but also people that you can reach out to if you need help. And I want people to start thinking really strongly that it's not a place of weakness to ask for help. I think it's a place of strength. If you put your guard down and say, "Hey, listen, I'm struggling. I need this." And then someone like me that's very pulled by emotions of people, like I want to help. Like I want whatever I can do to help you. I don't know you, but I have a sense that you're a good person, and I just want to help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I appreciate you taking the time here. I mean, I know you got a lot going on, and the world is a place where if you can't give people a hand up, right? If you can't give people a hand up, then what are we doing? You know what I mean? It's really a sad situation. But you are a great example, and many of the other people I've had on my show are great examples of what it is to go out there, create something you can be proud of, and then go try to give a hand up to somebody else, and then pull them up with you, and just keep going. And before you know it, and I love the examples of like Richard Branson and guys like that. They're just so authentically living their life and then helping others achieve the same while getting richer and richer every day, which is so cool. And I would have loved if they would have taken that $500 you're talking about and went back to where it really came from.
I know.
Yeah.
I'll try to find a tendency. It was so good. I just saw it a week or so ago. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting.
It would have been Richard. It would have been Elon. It'd been somebody. Obviously it's in circulation, but the idea that somebody got this big amount and they had to pay all of their employees, right? And then this guy made 800,000 a year, and then he had to pay some, and it just kind of goes down the line. It'd be cool to see that. But yeah, we get taxed like crazy, but we are able to. There's so many other things, like the fact that if for some reason your business doesn't work out, bankruptcy, like there's no other country. Well, I mean, obviously other countries do it, but like if you live in a village, let's say, and you owe 10 of the villagers money because they've been giving you the supplies to make
Oh,
your
they'll just kill
baskets.
you. They would just kill you in the village.
You're, you can't go to the village chief and go, I execute Article 13. I will not pay any of you. It's a little simplification there, but yeah, they'll just murder you, you know? Yeah, exactly. So I love it. So we live in a country where that's possible. We don't want to do that, but it's possible that you could then
Yeah.
go start over, bootstrap something else and go. And thank God I've never had to do that. But um, what is your parting piece of advice for those people out there that are, we've talked about how to get started and things like that, but just like, that parting piece of advice as we close out here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I could share with you. I would say there's a great structured strategy to change your life. Um, I don't think you should do things to make your life harder. Like if you don't like what you do, doesn't mean you just quit your job, because then then you're in a little bit of more trouble because you have bills, right? So I think there's a really smart, every use case and person would be different, but if you want to change things, look forward to something that you want to get to, and be very methodical about what do I need to do to get there. Be calculated. I need to save X amount of money. I want to have enough money for a down payment for a piece of land or something. I want to have enough money to hire a developer and build technology, and then make that move once you have saved enough. You're in a little bit of a safe spot, because I think the last thing you should do with your life is to add more stresses to yourself. So, but I've got to preach what I said before. You need to be happy with what you're doing. So you need to take a pause for a moment and say, I don't like where I'm working. I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like anything about my life right now. To me, that's hell. That's an awful place to be. So once you have that epiphany, what do you need to do to change things? And it could be a simple process. Again, you can use you can use platforms like LinkedIn and find an advisor in an industry that you may want to get into, that really pulls at you, you're interested in, and then get into that industry. And then your life can actually start to change, and you can actually start to be around inspiring people, and you can pull yourself out of where you're at. But I don't suggest like a Band-Aid. I don't suggest that. I think that's a very bad mental health and wellness way to do it, because then you're really in a storm and you have nowhere to go. You're just very deflated. And reach out to people like you, reach out to people like me, and just ask for help. I think that's the best thing you can do when you want to change your life or you want to find a new purpose. But you got to have a conversation with yourself and actually begin that process.
That's so good. There's a book I'm sure you've heard of, Who Not How.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so good. Like as I was listening to it, I was like, yeah, that's what I've always done. And I'm like, yeah, that's what when I learned that, everything changed, and like as he was going on about this and interviewing the guy, I forget his name, but he was interviewing him to write the book. And I was just sitting here going like, wow, it's so true. So you're saying, what a part of your advice is to go out there and find somebody that's doing what you want to do, or maybe even like has a mentorship program or whatever it is, and get to be a part of it. I love the idea. Like mentorships are great, but I love the idea of maybe interning somewhere where they're doing what you want to do at a high level.
Absolutely, because that gives you access. You start building relationships, but don't just intern somewhere to change your life. Do it in a place where it's an industry that you have a connection with or an affinity to, something that you gotta love what you do. And we have to work. Elon Musk goes to work every day. We have to work. You need to have a purpose. You need to have providing some kind of value. But you need to want to get up in the morning. You need to find joy throughout the day. And it has to be where you work, because you're sleeping for a third of your life. You're working for a third of your life. And hopefully the other third, you're finding some personal joys that you enjoy to offset and balance everything.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, too much work makes Mighty Mike a dull boy. We were talking about it before the show, but you go out and accomplish things. You have benchmarks for progress, and then Tony Robbins talks about that. He talks about having a situation where you are just progressing. You're doing a little bit better than you were yesterday, a little bit better than you did the day before, and that's where a lot of our joy and happiness comes from. Not necessarily being like somebody else, right? But being a better version of myself yesterday, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, right? And I love that aspect. And the things that you shared today we could go on for 5 hours, and I do want to. I'm like, I want to get
man.
into this. I was doing the swing trading for a little while, did really well at that, and then some crying days, but I did really well at that. And I know you could just give so much value there, but I appreciate you. And in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and close out. How can anybody connect with you or give you value in some way?
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks again for having me on. So Brian J. Esposito, I typically use LinkedIn or Twitter, Brian J. Esposito. And then the corporate website's EIE.rocks, so Esposito Intellectual Enterprises. And anybody can reach out to me. I don't have an assistant or anything, so I get back to everybody as quickly as possible. And I appreciate the chance to share some of my story with you guys.
Absolutely. Well, so we'll put all the information down in the show notes as well. But Brian, I appreciate you coming on. You just crushed it, dropped so many amazing value bombs here on the Mighty Mike Show, and I'm excited to share it with the world. Guys, comment below just value, because this was just so good. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mighty Mike.
All right. Until next time, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, or whatever you want to do, because that's how we roll around here. We're having a good time. We're learning new things. We're learning how to make some more money. And that's what we love to do, and to keep more of our money as well. And so I think we got some really good tips that we can take away here. So until next time, guys, we'll see you. Take care and live mighty. Oh, let's see him, Brian.
This is what I'm doing. Nice. You're better than me.
No, man, you dwarfed me. All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate
Have
you.
a good day. Thanks, man.
For more great content like this and your chance to win cash prizes each week live online, visit www.mightymikereed.com. That's www.mightymikereed.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite audio platform. Until next time, take care and live mighty.